I think God might have given us more than we can handle at this point, but turns out, no, he did not. There was a lot of refining and sanctification through parenting, and it takes time sometimes with some kids. But just remember that you are their mother first.
Welcome to Little by Little Homeschool Podcast, where you'll learn tips and strategies that will empower you to home educate your children. I'm Leigh Nguyen, a homeschool mom of over 12 years, which includes 2 graduates. When I started homeschooling, I was pretty much on my own and was desperate for encouragement and help. My mission is to be a source of encouragement and help to you. Whether you are just beginning your homeschool journey or you're deep into the homeschool lifestyle, Little by Little Homeschool wants to help you stay the course, because all the time you are investing into your children is completely worth it. If you're ready to take your homeschool to new levels, keep listening.
Unlike in school, with homeschool, you have children of all ages in the same room and, at the very least, under the same roof, going through the day together. Now, whether or not you do any type of formal preschool, however you would define that, there's lots of hours in a day to keep a busy preschooler occupied who just wants to really have some fun all day. That's their goal. I will say that. That is the mantra of toddlers. I feel like, kind of can go either way, but preschoolers, that's what they want to do. They want to have fun all day long. Nothing wrong with that, but they're always up for a good time, right? But when we are talking about preschoolers, I want you to remember as we get into this episode that there are different personalities. Every child is different. If you have multiple children, you know that. You can see that they are different. Their temperaments are different. There's things that some will put up with, and there's things that they will not put up with. There is just different levels to a lot of things and how they take things. Also, boys and girls in general can be very different. But remember, this is why you homeschool. This is one of the reasons why you homeschool. So don't think of this as a bad thing. Let me just share, if you are new here, a little bit of my story so you know where I'm coming from. We started homeschooling after my oldest was in school for, I guess it would have been 3 years, kindergarten through 2nd grade. So when we started, I had a 3rd grade girl, and I had a 1st grade boy, and I had a preschooler. And he was in I guess it would have been his first year of what you would maybe call preschool. So he would have been 3, turning 4 that year. So he did go to preschool that year because that's just what we did. We did that with the older 2. And I didn't know anything about preschool. I just remember my daughter was going to be, I guess she would have been 3. And suddenly I started hearing about, preschool. And I was the friend who had the older children. I had a lot of friends who didn't have any kids. And I just look back now, I'm like, it's so silly. It's so ridiculous that I thought this, but a lot of parents still think this, that if your child does not go to preschool, they will be behind in kindergarten. You're even told that if they don't know certain things, they'll be automatically behind. So put her into preschool. She loved it. She thought it was great. Put my older son into preschool for the 2 years, and he was like, I could take it or leave it. He would have some fun, fool around with his friends, and that was it. Put the youngest in. Halfway through, because we were homeschooling at that point, I wanted to pull him out and just have him home because I was just like, this is taking up time. It's really interrupting our routine and the flow of the day. And also I was like, I don't know that he really necessarily needs it. But my husband felt strongly that he needed to continue the year, so we did. And then I was like, okay, that's fine. We're not doing it the next year. So that's kind of how we started off with having a preschooler there most days when we were trying to get our homeschool done. And then the next year, yes, it definitely had a preschooler. So let's get into the nitty-gritty here that I want to share with you. And I'm going to say something in just a couple of minutes that I have it in my notes. And I'm not quite sure how it's going to be taken, but I think it needs to be said. So stay with me here. Before we get into the nitty-gritty and just exactly some tips that I know that you are really looking for, you want some practical advice on what to do with this busy preschooler who just wants to have a good time, right? Feel like, what is it? Instead of the song, was it Cyndi Lauper? Girls just want to have fun, like preschoolers just want to have fun. I know that's too long. It doesn't quite work, but you get the idea. So in my mind, when I'm thinking about preschoolers want to have fun, I think of that song. Although that was a song that came out, you're probably younger. I remember it coming out, and I remember I wasn't not supposed to listen to it. So don't tell my mom. I did. All right, so let's kind of get into let's kind of set the tone for the practical tips I'm going to give you. And the first thing I want to mention is just to remember that you are their mother first, not a teacher. I mean, overall, you're not necessarily a teacher in the way that you think of as school. Yes, we teach our children, we guide them, we learn alongside them at times, and we show them things. And so, yes, all of us parents are teachers. We've been teaching our kids a lot of things from day one, teaching them maybe at some point how to sleep a little bit better. We teach them eventually how to tie their shoes. We teach them a lot of things, but not in a formal education, what we think of like the modern school system kind of way. Overall, though, you are their mother first. So appeal to that. When you are getting frustrated, when you're like, I'm trying to do this math lesson with the 9-year-old and the preschooler keeps interrupting and fooling around and I have to constantly be getting up, you are their mother first. You are there, the one that is guiding them. You are the one that is laying that foundation. You are pouring truth into them. You are teaching them habits. You are teaching them character and the things that they need to know in order to glorify God throughout their life. So remember that you are their mother first. And God has not given you a child that you cannot parent. Trust me, you might have figured out who it is. I have one child that my husband and I both were like, I think God might have given us more than we can handle at this point. But turns out, no, he did not. There was a lot of refining and sanctification through parenting, especially one of our kids. And it takes time sometimes with some kids. But just remember that you are their mother first. Also remember that young children, they can read the energy of a room, not like in a woo-woo kind of way. But you know that young children, they can walk into a room and they know right away, is this a room that I can get riled up in, or is this a room I'm supposed to kind of keep that a little bit calm? Now, some kids it's not going to matter, but most kids can kind of read the energy of a room. And guess what? You in that room might have a calming presence. You might be wishing for just a peaceful day. They're probably going to skip over the energy and what you're putting out there and your desires and wishes for the day. And they are going to feed off of their siblings. My 2 boys would feed off of each other like there was no tomorrow. I mean, even now, they are, well, my youngest is just about 17, so almost 17 and 20, and they can just kind of look at each other. Now, they don't giggle like they used to when they were like 3 and 6, but still, they kind of look at each other and they kind of know what each other are thinking, and they're like, yeah, let's go do that. But when they were younger, it would just escalate, and all it took was just one look or one little whispered word, a word maybe that they're not supposed to use, kind of some of those, we'll say potty talk sort of words, and they just would feed off of each other. My daughter was kind of like, no, I'm not having any of that. Mother asked us not to act like that, so I'm not going to. So I did have that very cooperative child. But just know that young children are going to read the energy of the room. And if the room is already like kind of crazy, they're going to come into it and they're going to be the same way. But you can do what you can, just knowing that sometimes they're just going to feed off of each other. The last thing I want to mention before we go into my practical tips is to be your family culture. Just embrace the culture that you have, specifically when it comes to maybe the energy and the feeling that you have for your home. If your home is focused on and your goals are for it to be calm and ordered, that's okay. Be that. Be that family that is calm and ordered, and their home is peaceful and it just feels a certain way. Embrace that. Don't be embarrassed by that and don't feel ashamed by that. If your home is full of energy and spontaneity is what you thrive off of, be that as well. Don't be embarrassed. Don't be ashamed by that, and don't think that you are anything less than. Now, for both of these, if you're calm and ordered, there should be a little bit of spontaneity. There should be some energy and some joy in your homes. And it just maybe means that overall, you just kind of take more of a calmer approach. And if you're a family that's just very energetic and spontaneous and there doesn't have to be a set schedule or even a routine or rhythm, you guys all thrive anyway, that's okay. There is a time and a place to learn how to function within a rhythm and within a routine, especially as your kids get older and maybe they want to go and get a job. And if they're not used to being like, you have to work in this position right here for the next hour, and they're not used to that. Those are skills that we can teach our kids. But just be your family culture. Now, I'm going to make that bold statement that I mentioned earlier. Do not be offended. This comes from my 20 plus years of being a mother and from interacting with so many families and having just a lot of friends with a lot of kids and a lot of different parenting styles. And I love to just observe. I've always really enjoyed that, just kind of people watching. But as you really get to know people and as you are a mom, most likely you probably have a lot of friends who have kids within the same age range. And so you've not really watched these kids grow up. I have watched so many kids in so many different families grow up throughout the years. Kids who were about the same age as my kids or younger, but about that. So I have watched a lot of kids for, I would say, at least their late teens, early 20s and older. And I've watched them grow up. And so here is my bold statement that I'm going to say. If you didn't figure out, my family kind of leaned towards a bit more calm and ordered. And I had some friends whose families leaned more towards energetic and spontaneous. And we were still friends. We still got along really well. But I would say that sometimes I had some friends, and I feel like this is like a popular word to kind of say, and I don't know, it's a little bit, I feel like it's a little extreme. So let's just say that. The word that I'm going to use to describe some children and the way some children are is an extreme word. I really don't think that kids are like this, but we're just going to use that word because it's kind of a word that people often say. But people will talk about saying their children are feral. Say my feral children. Now, are they really feral? Are they really living off of the land in the backyard? You can't catch them. They're wild and crazy? No. They are not to the extreme that maybe you might say a feral cat is running around the neighborhood. They are obviously not like that. They're just freer kids who maybe don't have as many boundaries. And I'm not saying that it's better to have the boundaries or not the boundaries. I mean, yes, obviously there's some boundaries that are really good to have. But I have found that the children that I was concerned about when they were younger, who I would now look back and say they were quite feral, if they were raised in a solid, biblically based, intentional family, those children have turned out fine. I now see them as responsible, God-loving, God-fearing, God-honoring, and people-respecting and loving young adults. So don't think that if your kids are a little bit crazy or if you have families that you are friends with and you're like, wow, okay, there's a lot going on over at that house. Most likely the kids are going to turn out fine when they are raised in a solid, biblically based, intentional family. So do what you feel like is best for your family culture and how you raise your family. So, and anyway, they all turn out, I really do think they all turn out okay, no matter what it is. So don't feel like you're off the rails with things. Now, let's go into what to do with your preschoolers during lessons, because you want to get some math lessons done. You want to get some history, spelling, geography, whatever you have going on with some of your older children, whether that's one other child or that is 8 other children. Here are a little bit of advice that I would give you at the top of my list here. Remember, the preschooler, they are a part of your family. Don't hide them and don't constantly be shushing them. Don't constantly be pushing them aside, telling them to be quiet and telling them to sit down, to calm down, to go do this, and trying to push them off. Do I think that there is value in them learning to play quietly on their own? Yes, I absolutely believe that it is good for children to have some time alone to play, because there are going to be many times as they get older that they are going to be alone. And it's okay to be alone. And I think it's a really great skill for adults to be like, it's okay. I am secure to be by myself. It's okay. I can go shopping by myself. I don't need somebody constantly with me and by me. But don't be constantly shushing and hiding your kids. They are a part of your family. And the siblings, they have experienced this preschooler now for the past 3-4 years, right? They're used to it. It's not like you're going and throwing in this child into another family who are not used to this sibling. And so the siblings are used to it. The brothers and sisters, they're used to it. and they will get more used to it. Now, you might have some children who really need a very quiet environment to be able to do their math homework, and maybe that's a 10-year-old. Maybe you put them somewhere else. Maybe you have a little desk in your room and you do the lesson, and then you know that they can sit there and they can quietly do it. It'll take them about 10 minutes. They can quietly do their work, and then they can come back out into all of the energy that's going on in the rest of the house. That might be an option instead of constantly pushing the preschooler aside. Interruptions are okay. Understand that's what's going to happen. They're going to build something with their Legos and they're going to come and want to show you. But we also need to balance that with teaching patience and teaching character. I did do an entire episode about character, and I will link that in the show notes. So I encourage you to go and listen to that. It's never too young to teach your child character and to teach them habits and to teach them how to be in certain situations. Another really practical tip and something that I used often, and let me say also that before I say this one, people say, oh, I've tried that and it didn't work. I'm going to ask you, how long did you try it? And did you try different things? So that would be to have toys, tools, supplies, things that are thought-provoking, not mindless, not things that they are then going to be talking too much or that they're going to get bored of. Things that are going to keep their mind occupied and maybe spur them on to like something that's a little bit hard. And they only are able to use these things and only able to play with them during school time. Maybe you have a child who's really into puzzles and you might have to continually get more and more puzzles. Find friends. Maybe you guys can like recycle them through and pass them along. But whatever you think that's going to entertain them, at some points I had little manipulatives. I had these little tiny, we used them for math. They're different. There was like 4 different colors, like probably like the primary colors or something. And they were just plastic little bears. And we would use them for counting for, I guess it probably would have been my first grader, maybe my third grader. And my preschooler got to play with these. As long as we weren't using for them for the math lesson, he got to play with them, but only during school time and not every single day. Because when they play with something over and over again, guess what? It just becomes a normal thing and it's not very exciting anymore. So when you have some toys, some tools, supplies, things that are going to get their minds and their brains working a little bit, they can only use it during the school time. If you've tried this and you say it doesn't work, then try other things. There's a lot of great ideas that are online. You can go ahead and just Google that and find some ideas, but give it a little bit more time. But also, maybe it's just your child. Maybe this one won't work. That's okay. Try something else. I'm going to give you some other ideas. You have to decide also what your screen time rules are. I'm not going to judge anybody. We didn't really have the option for screen time during school time. I mean, I guess we did have one TV in another room, and so maybe he could have watched Sesame Street with my youngest, but he didn't like. We only had PBS. That was the only cartoon channel that he could have watched, and he didn't like any of those shows. Thomas the Tank Engine, my older son loved it, and my youngest was like, this is lame. So see how personalities are really different. So you have to decide, what are your rules for screen time? You might say, you know what? They get 30 minutes in the morning while I do lessons, math lessons specifically, with 1 or 2 children during that time, and they get to watch something that they are right there with you, and then that's it. But having those parameters and having those rules of this is only when it is, or maybe you say, no, we're not going to do screen time at all during the week. So you have to kind of know what is best for your family, and it's okay to change that up in different seasons as well. So have their own also school time. Some kids, especially if they have more than a couple older siblings, they want to be doing what their older siblings are doing. The youngest kids, they seem to grow up the fastest and they want to be doing whatever big siblings are doing. And so maybe if you have some type of quote unquote school for them, might be coloring pages, maybe it's counting some things, maybe it's cutting out certain things, just giving them some safety scissors and just extra paper and just letting them go to town. I know it makes a mess. I really do know it makes a mess. But just maybe they having some type of something that is just for them and say, hey, you get to do school too. And they're like, yes, I'm like one of the big kids, because they want to be like their brothers and sisters. Something else that really works well is to buddy them up for a one-to-one lesson. For example, say you have 3 kids like I have 3 kids and you have a preschooler. I would buddy up one of them with the preschooler to do something. Maybe it's to color something, or maybe it's to cut something out while I did a lesson with the other one. And I'm going to tell you right now, it worked with a buddy system best for my daughter and the youngest. The two boys together, everything escalated very fast. And so I wasn't able to do like a one-on-one buddy system for a few years with them. Just going to put that out there. And it might not always work. And let's not also put the burden upon the one child that is actually competent to do a one-on-one kind of buddy system. Don't overwhelm them. You might just say, can you just do this right now? Just sit here and color this or read some books for 15 minutes, just once a day, so I can do a math lesson with your brother. And then that be it. Last thing I want to mention here is to have them help you. Have them be your helper. Maybe you're doing some lessons and you say, hey, I need the geography book. Kids want to feel included. They want to feel useful. They know when you're just giving them just lame things that really don't count for anything. Maybe you say, oh man, I'm really thirsty. Can you go find my water bottle? You have up on the counter or on the kitchen table, you have your water bottle already filled up with water. You just forgot to bring it to wherever it is you're doing school. Let them go and do that. Send them on some missions to go and get things, but also make some things about them. For an example, you have a read aloud that you're doing and you're doing some family lessons, you're doing a read aloud. Before you get to that chapter book read aloud, let them pick out their favorite picture book and everybody is just going to humor them and they're going to sit and listen to this read aloud. Maybe it's the Rainbow Fish. Maybe it's Goodnight Moon. Maybe it's, I don't even know, whatever popular picture books are now. But everybody sits and they listen to that book and the preschooler is going to look around and say, wow, this is really cool. My 10-year-old brother and my 8-year-old sister, they're listening to this book too and they're engaging in it and everything. Everybody's having a good time. That really does something and just kind of boosts their self-esteem a bit and makes them know, not just feel, but know that they are important in the family as well. Before we end today's episode, if you are struggling with your homeschool in any way, whether this is your first year or you've been at it for a few years, I want to encourage you to go check out your homeschool blueprint. It's where we're going to lay that foundation so that you can make those decisions easily. You can figure out what the best curriculum is for your family. You can figure out just the best setup for your homeschool so that you guys can thrive, because I really want you to have a great homeschool year. Right now is a good time to be able to go through the course. You're probably hunkered down at home a bit with snowstorms like me, or maybe you live somewhere where it's a little bit warmer. If you are, go out there in the sunshine just for me today. Enjoy it just a bit on me. But I want to encourage you to go ahead and check out your homeschool blueprint at littlebylittlehomeschool.com/blueprint, and the link will be in the show notes for you as well. Be sure to come back to the podcast on Thursday because I have a pretty fun episode coming out then. I'll see you here then.
Thank you for listening, friend. I'd love to connect with you more. You can find social media links in the show notes and share this episode with a friend who could use a boost to her homeschool. See you back here real soon.